UAE is such a fast-paced environment. The energy kinds of feeds. It's growing at an immense pace that keeps us on our toes. Never stop creating, never stop developing, never stop innovating because UAE is never going to stop.
True. Hello and welcome everyone to yet another episode of BizCast, and this is a new year. So happy new year to everyone. And today with us is Mr. Ashwin Nayanar, the co-founder of WOKA and the man behind the super hyped Big Daddy Noon chocolates. Welcome, Ashwin. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you could come here and take time out for this podcast, even though we're not that famous yet. But thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Right, so Ashwin, we'll just get started. I know everything about you. I've been
Alright.
told everything, but just for our audience, if you could just give a brief about yourself, where you come from, how you got into the business, and just let's get started.
Sure. So my name is Ashwin, like you rightly mentioned, I'm the co-founder of VOCCA. We're a UAE homegrown brand that prepares premium handcrafted chocolates in the region. So my background is that of an architect. I'm qualified to be an architect. I even practiced a couple of years as an architect, but then as fate would have it, I got laid off early in 2018 or so. It never is fun. You've heard of situations like that, but when it happens to you, it's like a punch in the gut. So at that point, me and my partner, who's also a brother, he's a cousin of mine. So we started a business which was primarily into your traditional advertising format. So that was doing decent, but at the same time, that space is quite competitive here in the UAE, marketing and advertising. That being said, we were looking out on ways how we can expand in terms of creating a new product. Because end of the day, I feel that, selling a product is much more fun as opposed to a service. That's just me. It's just my salesperson and me talking. And that's when we had this requirement for chocolates, and we just stepped in the world of chocolates because of a necessity for a need. And like I mentioned a couple of times earlier, this was never the plan. So I have absolutely no qualifications in food and beverage. The only qualification is me eating chocolates, and that's the only experience I have in chocolates.
All right. So, a quick question right there. When you said it happened out of necessity, so
Yeah.
was there some order that was lined up for you guys? Was
Yeah.
that some requirement of one of the vendors, or how was it? How was it that this happened and you got into the manufacturing aspect, or was it that you were already in the manufacturing aspect at that time?
No, we weren't actually. So, like I said, it was a requirement that we had to fulfill as a vendor, as an agent. So we were on the lookout for brands, but our clients didn't want your usual suspects in the market. And we were on the hunt for something new. And that's when we started doing our R&D, we found that in terms of innovation, there was still a lot of gap in the market that was lacking,
Yeah.
especially catering to particular seasons. We have two big seasons here, I would say. One is your Ramadan and Eid that could be clubbed as one, and then we have your Diwali. But there are a lot of niche seasons within this country itself, which is not being catered to, or specifically not being catered to that particular target audience. So we wanted to see if we could do something. So in the early days, in order to test the product, in order to test the market, we had gone into the private labeling space
Yeah.
where we initiated recipes and raw materials and ingredients to a particular entity and they manufactured for us. That kind of took off because, like I said, we already had a need that we had to cater to.
Yeah.
Post to which, what happened was that as we started to scale, we want to get our hands more dirty, so to speak, as in we want to do more R&D, we want to do more innovation. And the facility that was kind of manufacturing for us, they were not willing to take that pain.
Right.
Because, like I mentioned, it's a pain to do that. It's a
And
pain
besides,
to
the
keep
quantities are
innovating.
less. You need
Exactly, right. And a lot of these players in the market don't innovate, rightly so, because it's a pain. It takes a lot of challenges to keep adapting to new things and jumping on a trend or whatsoever. So, but we were willing to do that. We were willing to take up that pain. But this facility didn't want to do that, and that was in early 2021. That's when we decided to set up our own manufacturing facility. So we currently have a humble facility in Ajman. So it's been a couple of years we've been functioning through that, but this year onwards we're planning to make big strides and we're setting up a much larger facility within Ajman itself, which would cater to not just this region but also across GCC, and we're looking at other locations across the globe.
Wonderful. So it's not very frequent that you see brands emerge and then disrupt a market all of a sudden, which we've seen in your case, right? In your particular industry, considering FMCG together
Sure,
as a whole, not just chocolates, not just in that aspect, but when we talk about your business or your brand particularly, we saw a sudden disruption right there. Creation, yes, and then you had a niche, but then there was a sudden disruption. How did you go about this? How did you It's one thing to launch a brand.
Yeah.
It's one thing to make a brand successful, and it's one thing to disrupt the market of that region particularly. I was in India last month, and I was just leaving. I was supposed to leave the next day.
Yeah.
One of my relatives comes to me and she says, next time you come, get that Dubai chocolate for me,
Yeah.
the famous one.
Yeah.
So it has not just been limited to the to the UAE, to the Middle East.
Sure.
You have people from the subcontinent. You have people, everyone talking about it.
Sure.
And that also has to do with the fact that you said you also belong to a marketing or a branding background. Of course, architecture was way before that, but how did you go about this disruption that was created? Did you guys plan something around it that the competitors didn't think about? Because as you said, the conventional players don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
They're already well established.
Yes.
But when you're just coming into the business, you have to think different. What was that thinking different that you guys thought worked for you that probably might not have worked for other companies at
Sure, sure. I mean, a couple of things. One, because we had no absolute background in this, it was a kind of a need for us to do our absolute best,
Yep.
like you're trying to make up for something, as I would say. And secondly, was that it was never disruption, I don't think is ever planned. It's about you putting in that work and being consistent, we had a childlike mentality to create fun flavors, at a good quality that not just we, but my nephews and nieces could try, and we would comfortably spread it across our family and everyone. So of course, clean ingredients, absolutely top-notch quality of products that we want to make, and at the most important aspect for us is innovation. So we constantly tried playing with flavors and bringing out new things, and that's how I believe the so-called disruption has occurred. And I wouldn't say we're still there. This is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much work for us still need to be done. And like you mentioned, there is a big demand for this Kunafa pistachio product.
Correct.
All we did was cater to that need. And not just that, we didn't stop right there. We kept creating other flavors. So we created the pistachio Oman chips, which actually did quite well. Again, when you look from a bird's eye perspective, pistachio and Oman chips doesn't kind of blend, but
Pistachio and chocolate don't make sense.
exactly, right? So we had an amazing set of team members in R&D and production who made that kind of childish flavor in us just come out to fruition. So it's just not us. I would say that when you look at the complete chain of VOCCA, we are at the absolute bottom, but we have superstars that working right at top who makes our reality, your disruption, I would say.
Out of considering two things, your R&D and marketing, what percentage would you give to the R&D in terms of the success of VOCCA and of course the chocolates? And what percentage would the marketing aspect play in the business? From what because see, your disruption is more like the social media disruption. So you see marketing playing a huge role, even though the R&D is very, very important. What percentage do you divide these into?
I would like to say it's equally weighted, but at the same time, if you have a good product, it's not enough if it's not marketed well, right?
Absolutely.
So I would say a 60% of my time goes into marketing a product, and 40% in making sure the product is fantastic and great and innovative. But at the same time, like you mentioned, that disruption only happened is because we tried to push it out there. So if you don't push it out there, then it's absolutely pointless you creating the most product, the best product in the world. But if it's not available, it's not way accessible, then it's pointless, right?
Right. How many years has it been since you've become an entrepreneur and you've been running the company? You said 4 years, roughly?
I mean, VOCCA, yes, a little above 4 years, but since effectively from 2018 onwards, I would say that I've been an accidental entrepreneur.
So 2018 is when you started, and then you had COVID right after.
Yeah.
How is it suffering through COVID as an entrepreneur without a fixed salary as an architect, which you might have been getting? So how is it? I mean, see, honestly, I really regard, and I've asked this to a lot of entrepreneurs that we've had, the period of COVID specifically tested businesses to the limits. Some didn't exist. Some just went away because they couldn't sustain. So it taught you sustainability. But for someone like you, when you said 2018 is when you just got into it, and probably in the next couple of years you had a situation where there is no business, or probably there was, I'm not sure about, but you don't have a stable income. How was that initial phase? And do you think that initial phase taught you sustainability that you've sort of carried further till now, or?
I would say that we knew how to work in a very lean format. So COVID actually helped us in a way where we had enough time to think about a brand, work on a packaging, and get real-time feedback. We could do one-on-one meetings and see how people perceived or customers perceived the brand, so that time allowed us to build, a foundation better. By the time the pandemic was done, we were ready to kind of go roaring into the market. That being said, I think the most neglected aspect in every entrepreneur story is not just like maintaining the finances, but the network system you need. Like having a good network system, like your friends, families, and whoever it is, your siblings, they, I feel, are the most neglected aspect of a person's growth. Because there were times that, like you said, we couldn't even take a penny out of the bank because we needed to feed our employees, because they rely on us when they come to the company, and without them there is no brand as well, right? So we prioritize them, and in order for our sustenance we had to rely on our network.
Yep.
So I know it was a challenging time, but we're glad we went through that, because that really made us appreciate what we have right now.
True. And at that time, you didn't have the manufacturing unit, right? It
No.
was more like everything at home,
Yeah,
so you
yeah.
could prepare the entire base of the business right
Yes,
there.
yes.
Wonderful. Okay. And all right, so it's been a great journey for you from where it started, and I think that lean phase taught you a lot about the sustainable,
Yes.
growth of the business. Talking about entrepreneurship as a whole, I'm pretty sure nobody plans to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
With you, it happened accidentally as well. With most of our, people that show up on the show as well, the same thing. What is that one thing that you've realized or learned in these 4 years that has been the most important aspect for entrepreneurship, in entrepreneurship?
I would say that motivation is temporary, but consistency is key. You might feel motivated to go out there and get shit done one day, but the other day you might feel like an absolute ass, right? In order to get yourself moving, you need to get that discipline in, and for that you need consistency. So what I've understood is that, people talk a lot about motivation, but relying on motivation is an utter waste of time. I would say put your energy in building a discipline and maintain that consistency even when days where you don't feel like moving. Just make sure you just take one step forward, just get through that day. And I think that's all it takes, just adding on those hours is what matters.
All right, wonderful. Now, let's just break the business down if we can, right? How it started. You mentioned how it started where you were at home, where you were laid down, and then you started the business where you with your brother, of course, and then you had a team as well during that COVID time. I'm pretty sure you didn't have a lot of business during those times,
Yeah.
or if you did, I'm not sure if you can just take us through that. And then how did you build it up? How were the first set of clients aligned? You mentioned about corporate gifting as well, which would have been a significant aspect of your
Yeah.
business initially.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it is still. And then how it got to a point where you cracked the deal with Noon, and you perhaps became this, viral chocolate as everyone talks about. So if we can just go down to those, milestones of the business, it'll be great.
So when we started off initially, we were focused purely on corporate gifting. We always wanted to create a B2C brand, but we are completely bootstrapped, right? So in order to build that kind of investment, we thought the best way to do is we start with B2B,
Correct.
where we build our own funds, right, to build the B2C brand. So in order to do that, we started taking up a lot of corporate gifting with name brands you must have heard in the market, like Tesla, your Nambuda, your Nakils and your Damax and all of that. We have worked with almost every brand within the region, primarily because we know where to adapt in terms of customizing a gift space. So that's where we were solely focused on. But what we soon understood is that seasons are only one half of the year. Let's say your October to March is that's when you're really busy. The remaining of the months you're dried up. So what happened is that we started to being stretched out in terms of what do we generate in those couple of months. It was stretched out completely the other couple of months. So as a business, it doesn't make sense to do that, right? So what happened was that we were putting all our eggs in one basket. So we decided to diversify in terms of services. Post which we started taking up private labeling. That is when we set up a facility in 2021. So once we understood that, okay, corporate gifting was working when we were, let's say, working with the facility to get private label for ourselves. But what is still happening is that whatever funds we acquire is being kind of, it's completely washed away in the next couple of months. So as we moved out, set up our facility in 2021, we decided that it's important that we take a private labeling, because that kind of business keeps the lights on. Those kind of contracts and those kind of relationships is long term. That's when we expanded our service into private labeling. Slowly after that, we started catering to hotels and restaurants. all during this while, we were catering to these aggregators in terms of their corporate space as well.
Right.
So for us, relationships was always key.
100%.
And through that, what happened is that we had one such need in the market, which was the pistachio kunafa, which meant the virality of it was absolutely insane. I wouldn't say that this was all pre-planned. We just happened to be at the right place at the right time. I'm very fortunate to be in that space as well. And what happened was that, our partners are at Noon, they were looking to launch a shared IP product. And that's when we started brainstorming and we came up with the Big Daddy.
Right.
And when we did that, primarily one of the reasons why we were able to work with Noon is of how quickly our turnaround time was. Even when you start committing something, it's very important that you put your 100% and make sure your turnaround times are absolutely quick, especially for a region like Dubai where everyone wants everything yesterday, right?
True.
So in that space, we were able to crack it, and because we were just small enough, we could adapt to it.
Correct.
Make multiple flavors, make multiple, do multiple R&D products, and make sure the samples get there on time. So all of this is a challenge for bigger brands, bigger
100%.
companies. So even if they wanted to work with someone else, I don't think we could have launched so many products at such a short span. So I believe that I still appreciate that we're still small enough and we want to extend this kind of capacity as much as possible, because we know that one day there'll be a point where as we scale up, it'll be very hard for us to go back to the drawing board and come out with flavors as soon as we grow. So we want to keep playing this game.
100%. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and that's parallelly when we also managed to approach Emirates as well. We were working with Emirates for a long time behind the scenes, but we want to see how we could get our brand out there. And that's when there was a shortage in the global market for cocoa, and a big brand that was already servicing Emirates could not cater to the same product at the same pricing. So we came in as a small player, so to speak. Like I said, we're able to take that hit. And again, we managed to wiggle through. So with Emirates, definitely, again, it's a blessing, I would say. But the most important aspect is that because of the scale of the company, we were able to make things happen so quickly. And again, I was there at the right place at the right time. So I wouldn't credit myself. I wouldn't take a lot of I would take credit for a lot of things we have done. It's just that whatever we did, we made sure we gave it our 200%, and everything was left up with paid.
Wonderful, wonderful. So right now, if you just go about the aspects of your business, you've got a manufacturing facility, you mentioned it. So is the corporate gifting still working?
100%, 100%. All verticals are working at full.
Okay, so now you've got, starting from corporate gifting, you're actually now into retail. You're also manufacturing wholesale as well.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. That's one aspect. There's corporate gifting and there's retail. Anything I'm missing?
That's practically it. Yeah.
So you're basically into every area that you could perhaps capitalize into. Is there anything that you think you would want to get into this financial year or the coming years?
Sure. So B2C, like I said, building our own brand, a name, household brand is very important for us. Is one of our goals. Last year onwards, we made that decision to push B2C more. So we have a retail space in Ajman. We opened one in Dubai Silicon Oasis. We are actively looking at expanding within Dubai and Abu Dhabi this year, at least 2 retail outlets. That's what we are focusing for this particular year. And not just that, like I said, we want to create a community out here. So that is how we're trying to differentiate between the other brands. We want to speak to the customers, get real-time feedback. There were a lot of flavors that people keep texting me about. Even the Parle G biscoff was actually some suggested by one of the members on a page, on Instagram. And it sounded very interesting because the child in me kind of got very excited for that.
Childhood for everyone.
And it was a special edition we had launched for Diwali because those are flavors which every Indian would like as well. The Parle G biscuit. Combining that with a UAE prominent flavor like a Lotus Biscoff was something we thought that could work. And right now it's worked out so well that it's a main hero product for us. So this is what we do. We launch, special edition flavors during seasons. We see if it works, then we pick one of flavors from those special editions and make it into a permanent product.
Perfect. That is incredible. I think that's the benefit that you guys have, that you can adapt, you can take that risk, because that's what got you so far.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you're not leaving that behind, and that's one problem for all the established players, that they cannot take that risk,
Yeah.
because approvals are very difficult.
Yeah,
I mean,
of
you've got
course.
layers and layers of decision
Yeah.
making. You can't do that.
Yeah.
And I think when you talk about Noon and how you got the order with you as well, the contract with you was one such reason where you didn't have that decision making layer, and you could rapidly make decisions and sort of execute things. That's wonderful. So when you talk about in the next few years that are lined up for the brand, is it particularly going to be established with chocolates, around chocolates? Are there some more products we're looking at? I don't know if you want to reveal that or not.
I mean, we're working on expanding our products, definitely, not just within chocolates.
Yeah.
But there are serious plans to launch within pastries and confectionaries, and maybe even like, your ice creams as well. So these are still, that is, under the pipeline, that is under R&D. So hopefully within this year itself, if things go well, we'll be expanding, but not under VOCA. We'll be creating other concepts as well, because we think now VOCA is kind of synonymous to chocolates.
Right.
We want to keep that brand very focused for chocolates itself. If you're doing something, it'll be definitely under something else, under a different brand. But again, it's too early to say anything specifically, but this is something we want to do. We want to kind of tap into every craving, so to speak, in terms of confectionery, and we hope we can crack the code there as well.
Has anyone ever told you you've got the nerve of your target audience and you've held it like anything?
I mean,
have you ever heard that before? But you should be proud about it. I mean, you should not take it to your head, but you should be proud about the fact that you know exactly where to hit your target audience and how to get that.
I mean, I'm glad if I have that. I'm not sure if I realize it, but one of the reasons why I put myself out there on social media is primarily because people know that if something goes wrong, they can hold Ashwin's collar, right? I'm putting a face to the brand so that I know I will take accountability for whatever happens.
Right.
That's because I'm very confident in the product, and I hope that nothing happens. That being said, I get a lot of real-time feedback. I get people saying that, what, I got a batch today, the pistachio filling was not enough. Is something getting wrong? Then I go check with my QC. I'm like, how come I'm getting a feedback saying this? She's like, oh my God, let me go check. So we are trying to backtrack every comment we get right to the kitchen. And seeing that if are we making mistakes, isn't the customer getting the best experience? And I feel that is happening because we're putting ourselves out there on social media, which builds the brand value, which builds accountability, and which in turn builds visibility as well.
And also the fact that the industry that you're into, if you talk about the established players, the audience or the target audience of the people do not have accessibility to them if they want to give reviews. But when you're so accessible, you eventually would hold the nerve of the audience as well. So that's incredible. Won't take it much longer. I would just ask you a few things. Let's talk about the most important aspect. Well, we do these podcasts for young entrepreneurs, for entrepreneurs coming to the UAE. If there's one piece of advice, just want to know, when did you move to UAE first of all?
I was born and raised in UAE, so this is practically home to me.
Okay, you were born and raised here. So one piece of advice that you have, I mean, I'm pretty sure you got into entrepreneurship out of necessity, right? But now you are an entrepreneur and quite successful, and you're just growing, right? One piece of advice you have for the youngsters that are coming to the UAE, looking to be entrepreneurs, learning entrepreneurship, perhaps in business schools, and what I've understood and what I've learned is what you learn in business school is more theoretical, and when you go out there and you experience and you face those real challenges, you get hit on the face. Absolutely. And that is the real time learning, in my opinion. So that's why when it's someone like you sitting across the table and getting advice from you, it is so different because you've experienced rather than just read about those things. So if you have that one piece of advice for any young entrepreneur entering the UAE market, not specifically your industry, but any industry for that matter, one, let's consider one for your industry, what you've learned so far, and one would be just generic. If you could just give one piece of advice, and that'll be it.
So I would just combine all of these, so to speak. And specifically, since you mentioned UAE, I believe that I was able to create this particular brand. I was able to create or reach wherever I am because it's in UAE. UAE is such a fast-paced environment. The energy kind of feeds. We kind of feed off of it. It's growing at an immense pace that it keeps us on our toes. So I would say that anyone who's coming here in UAE, particularly trying to do business here in the UAE, I would say that never stop creating, never stop developing, never stop innovating, because UAE is never going to stop.
True.
Right? So as they scale up, in order for you to be a part of their economy, in order for you to contribute into the economy, you also need to kind of not keep up to their pace, but at least attempt to keep creating and keep innovating day in, day out.
Right.
And that does not just go for UAE or business in the UAE. In general, I believe that innovation is very important, not just at a product level, but also at a service level. What more, what is the value addition you can provide, or what is this kind of corners I can cut in order to get the best experience for my customer. So we need to think about it from all aspects, and we should never stop. So there might be a point where, let's say, I would call myself 10-15 years down the line maybe successful if things go well. But even then, I wouldn't want to stop and think that, what, this is it, I'll just keep selling what I have. I would still want to innovate. I would still want to do whatever best I can for my customers. So never stop innovating, never stop creating is the best advice I could give at this point.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that's very synonymous to your brand as well as the UAE, where it's constant research, it's constant growth, it's constant change. And that, I think that is the most important aspect for businesses to realize. Because if you don't change, 5 years down the line, you're out of the business.
Absolutely.
Right? So change is so important. But when you talk about your business, I think we've had a 15-minute conversation and we've just spoken about research and development, R&D, changes, growth. How can I create more products? Which I think is the core of your business. And I think that in fact, I would put it above the marketing that you are into, that you're doing for your brand, because you keep creating new things. Right, and those new things would eventually speak to a different target audience that perhaps the first things might not have spoken to, and I think that would definitely be a great future for you guys as well. So, thank you so much for joining, Ashwin.
Thank you. Thank you
Really
guys
been
so
an honor
much.
speaking with you. Wish I could have spoken more, but I'll definitely meet you someday and we could have a conversation on the
Absolutely.
chocolates and coffee.
Anytime.
Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All mine.
Yeah.